Hey guys, it's your old buddy Rob here. I just wanted to fire out a very, very quick apology to start this latest episode of the One Puck Short podcast. I had a kind of small issue with my microphone for the first about 2 minutes of this episode, so it was kind of choppy just for that first 2 minutes. But after that, it seems okay. So I apologize for that, but stick with it. It's a great episode with Shawn Roarke from NHL.com, and as I say, after this first 2 minutes, it cleans right up, and it's all gravy from there on.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Puck short.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of the One Puck Short podcast. Delighted to be joined by the director of editorial for Editorial.com, Shawn Roarke. Shawn, hi, how are you?
Hey, my pleasure. Great to join you. I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, it's great to have you on, especially in the light of the news. Seattle will be joining the NHL from 2021. They'll become the 32nd team in the NHL. What's your initial reaction to that news?
Fantastic. I think it's great on all fronts. You know, you just mentioned it'll become the 32nd team. Gives the league some parity or some equality with an equal number of teams, 16 in each conference instead of 16 and 15. So the four divisions line up perfectly. There was talk yesterday when they did this at the Board of Governors meeting that they would move Arizona to the Central to make everything eights up and kind of give a level playing field. 2 years ago when Vegas came in and couldn't get their bid together because of arena problems. They've solved those arena problems, especially coming in 21-22. They'll be able to fully refurbish the downtown arena they have there now that was home to the Seattle Supersonics back in the day in the NBA. I think Vegas has put down the blueprint, and they're going to follow it. They're going to have the same draft rules and should have a pretty good chance of coming in as a fully competitive team and to see if they could beat what Vegas did. And the only way they can do that is by winning the cup. So it's a pretty high bar, but I think the people in Seattle that are running the team are pretty smart and are not intimidated by that bar, but excited by it.
You mentioned there, of course, the same expansion draft rules as Vegas. I wonder if maybe some general managers will be a little bit more cautious this time than when they dealt with George McPhee. Do you think that might happen where they've learned from the whole Golden Knights experience and what Vegas went on to do? And some of those kind of, should we call them side deals that were made that actually really worked out quite well for the Golden Knights?
Yeah, no, and I think, that the GMs will be much smarter, but I also think whoever's going to be the GM of Seattle, and when they do it with this extra year kind of coming in, if they hire somebody early, they have a long time to plan, to scout, to kind of identify some of those players that could be on the list, but I don't think anybody's going to be like, hey, can you take Marc-Andre Fleury, and if you do, we'll give you something extra to make it worth your while, or
Right.
Can you take William Karlsson instead of this guy, and we'll give you something to make it worth your while. A lot of those deals blew up, so unfortunately, the new GM, whoever he is in Seattle, is going to have more wizened peers dealing with him. But you know what? There's other ways to make things like that work, and smart people occupy those chairs, and they always seem to find a way to get an advantage. So, maybe the advantage the next time it has more to do with money, right? And taking some contracts that other people can't handle. So there's always something that somebody needs that an expansion team usually is a perfect landing place for. So I think whoever it is will figure out a trick or two of the trade to pass on to whoever might be studying them next.
As a city and a market, what do you think we can expect from Seattle? They've obviously got the Seahawks, they've got a MLB baseball team, they've got a WNBA team, formerly an NBA team. Maybe they'll look to bring one back. And they do have a little bit of hockey history. The Seattle Metropolitans won the Stanley Cup in 1917, but it obviously been a while since there's been a pro team in the city. But this seems to be a market that everybody around the NHL is very excited to get involved in.
Yeah, I think it's a great sports market. You forgot the other team that's in Seattle that has been wildly successful, and that's the Seattle Sounders of Major League Soccer, and the rivalry that they have with Portland and Vancouver. And for Seattle, they're going to have a natural rival now in the Vancouver Canucks. But it's a great sporting market. I don't know, how much of the coverage outside of North America, but the announcement was made at noon yesterday in Sea Island, Georgia, which is where the Board of Governors was having their meeting. And so that was at 9 a.m. in Seattle. And there's a bar there that's I guess, one of the two hockey bars there, and it was full of Seattle fans watching a stream of the announcement to celebrate the official arrival of hockey back in Seattle. It was an unbelievable scene. They sold 10,000 season ticket deposits in 11 minutes. They sold 31,000 in the first day and 8 hours. So there's been no shortage of excitement. I think you look at the city, right, and it's a very vibrant city. A ton of like really big important businesses there. Starbucks, Google, all those kind of places that contribute to the economy. I think there's a fan base there that's going to be active, eager, and have some disposable income to bring to the equation. And then there is a rich hockey history there. The Seattle Totems played there in the old Western League when that was a professional league. There's several Western Hockey League junior teams there. The Thunderbirds, the Everett team is right near there. So they've had Portland's not that far away. The Portland Winterhawks. They've had a number of teams in and around that area that have been supported quite well, and their youth hockey is vibrant. They're running out of rinks, and one of the things this new Seattle team is going to do, much like Vegas did, is they're going to build a training facility to the north of the city, and they're going to have a 3 sheets. The Vegas one has 2 sheets. They're going to have 3 sheets of ice, and that's going to alleviate some of the issues they have. One of the things that the youth hockey people there are afraid of is that when this Seattle team comes in, there's going to be such a demand to play hockey, and it's going to grow so quickly that they would run out of ice. So this is somewhat alleviating that. So I think the optimism is across the board for what Seattle can do, especially with the people that they brought in to run this team. Todd Lewicki has done a couple of expansion teams now, and Dave Tippett is kind of their head of hockey operations at the moment until they hire a GM. And he's played and coached in the NHL, and he's a very, very smart man. So I think they're in very good hands.
You mentioned Dave Tippett there as a special advisor. He's the only hockey ops person on staff right now, but of course the quest to find the first Seattle general manager is now officially on. I guess unofficially it's kind of been bubbling away in the background maybe for a little while. Several names been linked with it. It's difficult to speculate whether they want someone with experience or somebody who maybe brings a bit more vavavoom, shall we say, to it, a younger GM with a brighter view. But whichever way they go, is this a position they're going to want to fill sooner rather than later, do you think? Or will they maintain an air of patience to ensure they get absolutely the right guy, even if it means waiting another, say, 6 months or a year until maybe the summer coming up to get the right person in that seat?
I think, obviously they would wait till the summer. I think they would want to see how things shake out, with various GM positions and who's going to be interested and who's going to be out of contract and all of those things. I don't think you want to commit too early to a potentially good candidate when another candidate, falls into your lap. I mean, look, there could be guys looking for jobs this summer. Steve Yzerman left the Tampa Bay Lightning, still serving as an advisor there. I don't know if he's interested in the job, but there's people out there that they'll want to talk to. There's probably some candidates we haven't even thought of yet, but I think they do want an experienced guy. I think, George McPhee kind of, again, provided. George McPhee's the GM of Vegas. He went there from the Washington Capitals, and he's kind of, I think, provided the blueprint. You need somebody, I think, in doing this kind of team, you need somebody who has a network, right, of people with other teams that he's comfortable talking to, that has a basis of who's in the league and what they can do, and has, a foundation of several years worth of drafts and other things, because you're going to be identifying a lot of younger players. You're going to be identifying a lot of prospects along with the players that need to fill your roster. And so I really think, you need somebody who's been through several drafts and kind of run those drafts and has a deep basis of knowledge of players and how they can fit together and how they can fit in your team and how they can fit in the style you want to play. So I think at the end, I don't know who it's going to be, but I think it'll be an experienced guy. I think maybe mid-level. I don't know if you'll get a real, a much like a really experienced guy that's got 30 years in the league, because the league is changing and it's moving in different directions than that. But it'll be somebody. It will. I don't think it'll be somebody that it will be a first time GM.
It's certainly an interesting one. I mean, we talked about George McPhee, mentioned him there, and obviously he got Kelly McCrimmon in to assist him, and a big part in the expansion draft. His name keeps being bandied about. Do you think maybe that is the most likely scenario? We get the experienced GM, as Vegas did with George McPhee, and then the assistant GM is the guy with the eye to the future, either a natural successor down the road or just with a better handle on the way hockey is heading in terms of analytics and knowledge of the CBA and things like that.
Sure, and look, the one thing in the NHL, right? There's a salary cap, and there's a limit on the number of players you can have, and there's a bunch of competitive limits. The one thing that's not really limited is what you want to spend to get an advantage, in your front office. So you could certainly see a scenario where there's several guys involved, right? There's a general manager that is literally a manager, and then there's several assistants under him. Somebody that understands the salary cap better than most people do, somebody that understands the prospects better than most people do, and somebody that understands analytics better. I don't know that you necessarily need one guy to be able to be good at all of those. I think you could have three guys that are excellent at one thing and kind of make a round table almost. So, those are the opportunities that sit in front of Seattle, and they're going to be very creative in how they handle it. So, but I do think the head guy, the guy that'll be doing negotiating, the guy that'll be going to his peers and saying, hey, what about this? And have you thought about this? And can we maybe do this trade or whatever? Will be a veteran guy that has those relationships. And look, part of it's a position of strength, right? If it's a new guy, you're test them if you're an established GM. So, you don't really want to be in a position of weakness when you're trying to develop a team. So I think you need somebody who's been through the wars and can kind of dictate, what those first steps are going to be and know that they work because he's done them before.
Do you think they might apply the same logic to the coach, the first coach? Also in Vegas, they had Jared Gallant, who had experience in the league before and had done well. I think he was maybe a little harshly treated by the Florida Panthers. Do you think Seattle look for that experienced coach as well, somebody who is familiar with the landscape and knows what to expect? And again, he can help a new franchise make the best part possible, hopefully.
Yeah, I think look, Gerard Gallant was coach of the year before. So
course, yeah.
when he came onto the market, I don't think Vegas had to think twice about that. And he's a good coach in a number of ways. Tactically, he's a good coach. I think he was perfect for that group. He's able to motivate people. He's not a coach that needs a veteran lineup. He can work with younger players. So I think that's the model. But again, like we talked about, the league is changing. And you look at some of the coaches now, much younger. Bruce Cassidy in Boston, Montgomery in Dallas is right out of college. So there's an emphasis on younger coaches and coaches that deal with younger players, I think, because the league is getting younger. The stars are getting younger. Everything's trending towards a younger player. So I think they're going to think a lot about what their team is, how they want to build their team, and kind of pick a coach that's going to fit that personality. If they try in the draft to go for more veteran players and have a really experienced team early on, they may want a more experienced and kind of rigid taskmaster type coach, or if they're going to go young, they might want a teacher and kind of go from there. So, and again, this season's already been really tough on coaches. There's a lot of coaches already sitting out there with some more on the hot seat. So I don't think that Tippett and whoever else is going to be involved in that decision are going to have any shortage of people to choose from.
Yeah, and as Kat Silverman mentioned a couple of episodes ago, the line between Dave Tippett and Joel Quenneville isn't as big as some people might think. That's the interesting one for me, is Quenneville. But as you said, it depends on who the GM is, the roster composition, and many other factors, perhaps, where they go with that decision.
Yeah, and it depends on what these coaches that have lost their jobs, what they want to do, whether they want to get back into coaching, whether they want to stay on the sidelines whether somebody's going to pick him up before the season's over. Like I said, the pressure's starting to ratchet up. It starts to ratchet up here right after American Thanksgiving. That's when managers start to look at their teams and say, hey, we don't belong here. We belong higher up. It's the coach's fault. We're going to make a change. And that's going to continue throughout, right? There's some teams that are underperforming, and some guys have already lost their jobs. John Stevens in L.A., is just one of them. And so I think they'll have to take stock of who's available at the end of the year. And it's going to be a very appealing job, I think, to any coach, because you're starting with a blank canvas, right? Most of the time when you take a new job, you're walking into an already established culture. Somebody else has picked the team for you, has loaded it with prospects in their style, not in your style, and so depending on how early they pick the coach, whoever that person is going to be, he's going to have a very important say in shaping the identity and the culture and fill in the cupboard of players for that organization. And that's an opportunity that rarely comes around for a coach. So like I said, there will be no shortage of people who want to talk to Dave Tippett about this position.
Do you think that longer, we'll call it lead time, is going to be advantageous for Seattle? Because they don't join the league until 2021. So they've got, 2.5 years, give or take, before they hit the ice. Whereas Vegas had sort of a year less than that, really. Does that length of time to be patient, to make decisions about coaches and GMs and just get the operational side up and running, the renovations complete, the training facilities all sorted out? Because, you talk to guys like Ray Ferraro about the situation in Atlanta when the Thrashers started, and it was kind of a mess. So Seattle have really got that time to prepare properly, you'd feel, and that's going to give them a bit of a leg up, right?
Yeah, well, you would hope, but it's what you do at that time, right, and how you use it. Look, sometimes I have 3 weeks to write a story, and sometimes I have 3 hours, and sometimes that story I have to write in 3 hours comes out way better than the 3 week story because I misused my time during those 3 weeks. I over-reported it, or I kept saying, I can do it tomorrow. I got plenty of time. And then breaking news happens or whatever. And then all of a sudden, you're staring down the barrel of a 3 hour deadline instead of a 3 week deadline, and you haven't done anything yet. So, it really is about how you use that time, how you're able to, there's a difference between being patient and methodical and almost procrastinating. So, to a degree, it's definitely going to be what they do with the time they have, but the time as a natural entity can only be well for them. I know they're all excited. Everyone's excited to get going, and they did want to come in 2021, but there were going to be some questions about their building being ready right at the start, and instead of running into that, I think everybody at the end felt more comfortable coming in the year after. So yeah, that cushion is fantastic, but they won't have the same certainty that Vegas had. Like, everything happened really quickly for them, and they were able to get things going in a very rapid manner. It was momentum just kind of went from the expansion draft straight through all the way to the Stanley Cup final. Like, they never really had time to overthink anything. They made a plan, they executed it, and off they went. There'll be a lot more downtime for Seattle, and they're going to have to figure out how to deal with that and not overthink things.
Let's talk team names for a minute. CEO Todd Lewicki said they'll take their time. They're not going to rush into this again, as we've just said. They've got plenty of time to think some of these things over. But for the sake of a bit of fun, this is why we're here, right? Shoot the breeze, have a bit of fun.
Yeah.
Is there some names that appeal to you, either the historical ones? I know people have mentioned the Totems, the Metropolitans, or I know some people like the idea of the Seattle Kraken. I quite like one that Sarah Sevian put out there, Seattle Teen Spirit, with the old grunge scene. Is there one that appeals to you, or you like, or even just ones you just for fun you think would be kind of cool if they used?
Yeah, I mean, look, the ability to name a team has changed so much in the last couple of years. I still remember when the Lightning and the Avalanche and the Wild all came in, and those were shocking names. Where are the S's? They're not they're not old school, they're not original six, how are these going to work? And now nobody thinks twice about them, and the Lightning have been a model franchise for years and, have been able to play off of their nickname with the Tesla coil and everything else that they've done. Even the Golden Knights, right? Like there were so many arguments about that when it happened. And then they took that branding and they made a mascot and a pregame around it that's second to none. I mean, I still get chills when I think about the ceremonies that they did, the pregame ceremonies before the Stanley Cup final. Just high theater, like something that you would expect on Broadway or in Vegas, at a casino. Like they were able to. I think whatever you end up doing, you just have to go all in on it, right? You have to commit to it, and it has to work across everything you want to do. The colors have to work, the name has to work, and you have to be able to unify it all and really present something that people can grab onto. So, look, I think the Kraken is so much fun just because it's so out there, but I don't know how you make it work because I'm 50 years old and I don't have that imagination anymore. I'm sure my 14-year-old son would be like, "Oh, that'd be so cool. You could do this and you could do that." And you're trying to build a fan base for life. So, why not start at that young age? I personally, because I love the history of hockey and all those things that go on, like the totems that were in the Western Hockey League, they had the totem pole was kind of their logo, and their color scheme was kind of black and green and beautiful. Like one of their jerseys was almost like a soccer kit, like kind of the black stripe and then all vertical, the black and then the green wide striped, and just looks so sharp. I would buy one of those tomorrow if I could get a hold of them. So maybe that's my sentimental favorite. But I'm really excited. Maybe they could go with the emeralds, right? Because it's the Emerald City, and then you make the jersey, emeralds the dominant color. There's not a ton of that in the NHL, and you would certainly stand out. I think it'll be fun for the next little while to kind of speculate and see where things are heading. I thought one of the interesting things was if you saw some of the social media postings out of Seattle after it happened, a lot of what they did art wise was based in an orangey salmon color, right? Like the thanks for coming to the reveal and things like that. And they used the Space Needle. They made the Space Needle out of 2 hockey sticks, and the top, the observation was a puck, and then the background of all that was salmon color. I don't know if that's just the way that happened. I don't know. With marketing people, you never know if that was kind of a soft, hey, let's get that out there and see what people think about it. So I'm interested to see the drama that's going to surround the naming process as it moves forward. And look, and I think Seattle's going to be smart about this. It's 2 years until they play. They don't want to be forgotten, right? So you don't settle everything in 3 days. They don't come back tomorrow and they say, okay, our name's this, and then 2 days later our colors are this, and then, hey, we'll see you in 2 years. I think this is going to be a process where, they keep doing stuff to keep themselves in the hockey conscience, and the logo, the mascot, the colors, those are all tools they have in their arsenal to kind of stay current and stay on the front pages. So I think they'll use them.
So obviously the NHL permanently expanding into Seattle. One area that they keep visiting, happily for me, is Europe, and obviously has a few preseason games in China as well this year. You yourself visited Belfast when the Bruins came over in 2010. I know the Giants management are interested in getting NHL back again in 2020, part of the 10th anniversary. I mean, where does Europe stand for the NHL now, do you think, in terms of both fan base and hopefully see some of this through NHL.com and where the traffic's coming from, but also maybe in the future and marketability and just keep grow the game?
Yeah, and that's the key, right? I mean, look, hockey's a global game. The NHL gets players from all over the world now. The fans are, tied into the NHL because of those imports that come in, and the game has been grown and exposed in countless ways that when I started covering the NHL back in the mid-90s, I couldn't even imagine. This year we went to Germany, Sweden, Finland,
Finland, yeah.
and China. And there's been a commitment to go back. Sweden's going to remain a huge part of that just because of the number of Swedish players that are in our league. I think Finland's going to be a big part of that for a long time. When you look at the young Finnish players now that are just dominating our league, Patrick Laine, Rantanen, all of those guys, Sasha Barkov in Florida, there's Heiskanen in Dallas, Dahlin in Buffalo. Those are the big, huge guys that are going to be in our league for the next 10 years. So, but then, I think there's a willingness to try different places and move into areas and see what kind of feedback that we can get. I thought, look, personally, going to Northern Ireland and going to Belfast in 2010 with the Bruins, and then they went from there to Prague and they played the Coyotes, and the Coyotes went to Riga, Latvia. I mean, it was a real European tour for me, but to see hockey in Belfast and to see the way that it was embraced and to get to experience that hockey culture was eye-opening to me, and it's never left me. I followed the Giants as closely as I can from across the pond since then. Todd Kelman, and when he was there, was so good to me that I've always pulled for them. I still pull for Todd a little bit in Cardiff, but my loyalties definitely lay with the Giants if I'm talking about the English league. So I think the sky's the limit. I think everybody's open to whatever makes sense and to broaden that brush as much as possible and to do it in the regular season and to do it more often. I mean, Gary Bettman and Bill Daly have talked about this numerous times. So I think there'll be no shortage of hockey in Europe over the next few years, and I personally I think that's a wonderful thing. I mean, you look at our site and we have the NHL.com, but then we also have a French language site that serves, the French speaking portions of our fan base, particularly in Canada. And then we have 6 foreign language sites, right? We do a site in Swedish, we do one in Finnish, with German, Slovak, Czech, and Russian. We want to serve our fans. We've just started to do the European Game of the Week, where there's a weekend game that's in the afternoon that becomes a primetime game in most of continental Europe. And, that's an active thing to let people watch the game where they could still go to bed and they don't have to wake up the next morning and explain to their boss while they're falling asleep at their desk because they were watching hockey at 2:00 in the morning. So I think it's just going to continue to grow.
Do you think technology has been a big part of that as well? Obviously, I mean, I can go and watch a game on my mobile phone or cell phone in like the bath, in bed, in my kitchen, wherever. I can catch up with a game the next day while I cook my dinner and all this sort of thing. And has that been as big a driver, perhaps, as anything else? Because it's that much easier now to stay abreast of what is going on, to watch games, to follow games, to interact with other fans and writers and personalities.
Oh, for sure. I mean, 100%. Again, it depends on what you grew up with. For my son, again, to bring him into this conversation, or my daughter, all they know is the immediacy. All they know is if I want to watch a game, I can go on the computer and I can watch it while somebody else is watching TV. And if I want to watch the Colorado Avalanche, I can do that. I didn't grow up that way. I couldn't even watch the Colorado Avalanche if I wanted to. It was whatever game was on the TV. It was your local, growing up in New England, it was the Bruins were on, and that was fine by me. And then if there was a game, on ESPN or Sports Channel America or whatever, that was a bonus. And now you can watch virtually anything you want. I grew up as a younger man, very much into English soccer when there was no English soccer on American TV at all, and you followed it through reading 442 and maybe there was the BBC Game of the Week, and that was about it. And you read Planet Football, and I would go to I would go to the magazine shops here in the city when I started working in the city and pick up the London papers and be able to follow it that way. But it was work to do it, right? And that kind of made it more special. It was very clannish. It was very, you were part of a special group. You showed up at the same places to watch the game. There was a bar to watch the Manchester United game. There was a different bar to watch the Arsenal game. And it was a community, right? And now that community has grown because of technologies and circles and circles. The fact that we know each other is through technology. That we both have this tie to the Belfast Giants. You with it being your home team, me with it being thousands of miles away, but I'm still able to follow it through Twitter and through the team website and through highlights and all those things. And people are able to follow me and my coverage of the NHL through that same technology. So the world has become such a smaller place and so much more immediate, and that can only make fans more and more passionate. Before, if I missed a game or whatever, you were like, oh well. Now there's no excuse to miss a game, and there's no excuse for me not to be as well versed as I can on whatever teams I'm passionate about. So and that passion translates into going to the games when you get a chance. It translates into buying the ability to watch the games through whatever package you're going to use. It translates into merchandise. It translates into so many things. So you want to make that tent as big as you can, and technology is what allows you to do that.
Just one last thing, Shawn, I'd like to discuss with you. The NHL All-Star voting is open now. You were involved in the NHL.com staff picks. You helped put the Atlantic Division team together. What is the All-Star game to the NHL now, or how is it perceived, do you think, as an event across the league?
Well, it's a celebration. It's a celebration of our game. It's an opportunity for the whole hockey family to get together. One of the things that we do when we do the All-Star game is we make sure, at least early on, and we try to keep it through injuries and replacements and everything else, that every team is represented, because the All-Star games are a representation of who we are as a league, who our stars are, what our product is. And I think, you look at it and you think about who's going to be there, and how some of the young players in this game now are likely to be the players that are going to be there because they're the superstars, right? So, you have McDavid, you have Matthews, you have, all these really young players, Rantanen, we spoke about McKinnon, all these new stars that are going to come and kind of be associated with some of the older players that have established themselves as stars, the Ovechkins, the Crosbys, those type of players. And it's an opportunity to put all those players on a stage and show the world who they are and what they can do, not only on the ice, but their personalities. And again, this is where you get into technology and social media. It's an opportunity for 3 days to have that whole hockey community together and make all kinds of magic and memorable moments. And it's an opportunity to celebrate, right? Everybody's there, whether it's the sponsors, whether it's the media from across North America. The players are all, at least friendly at this point, from either playing on national teams together or against each other, junior teams, colleges, whatever it might be. So, it's a 3-4 day break to kind of catch your breath, realize that there's going to be a sprint to the finish line once it's done, and to take that time, if you're lucky enough to be there or to watch it on TV or follow it socially, to really celebrate what is the very best of our game.
Shawn, it's been brilliant to have you on. Is there anything you want to plug before I let you get on with your day?
No, I mean, I hope people, come to NHL.com and read what's there and see the videos and the social stuff that we do. I think it serves the fans really well. I'm just happy, as always, to talk hockey, and very few people tell me it's brilliant for me to be on their show. So I'll go on yours anytime, because that's a pretty good compliment. So no, like I said, just happy to promote the game and talk about the NHL. And to talk about it a little bit, we didn't talk about it as much as maybe we could, and maybe we can next time. The British game, which I think is making huge leaps and bounds. I can't wait to see what Great Britain does this year in the World Championships, making the jump up like they did. One of my favorite stories from this year, if you're going to do a year end, what was the best things in hockey? The Liam Kirk and advancing to the top pool and world play and World Championship play. All brilliant. Like I followed the English League a little bit before I went to Belfast, and I followed it much closer since. And I think it's in a better place now than it's ever been. So, if you're a hockey fan, and it doesn't matter whether it's NHL, the British League, the Finnish League, the Swedish League, I think hockey's in a much better place than it's ever been, and has the opportunity to grow by leaps and bounds as we move forward now.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, Shawn.
Hey, my pleasure.
Hey, baby, I hear the blues are calling. Tossed salads and scrambled eggs. Mercy. And maybe I seem a bit confused. Yeah, maybe, but I got you pegged. But I don't know what to do with those tossed salads and scrambled eggs. They're calling again. Scrambled eggs all over my face. What is a boy to do?